Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Roxora, and on this channel we do all things Magic the Gathering. And today we're going to be talking about the announcement that was made last week about Alchemy. I really wanted to do this when it came out, but I was traveling over the weekend, and so that's why this is coming a little bit late. But I'm glad I did, and I've also been listening to a lot of different opinions, so I'm going to be talking about all of those. But before we do that, if you enjoy my content, remember to subscribe as well as to leave a like and a comment down below about what kind of content you guys want to see in the future. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about two different aspects of this announcement. Number one, the content of the announcement itself, meaning like the details, what all of these different things mean, and so forth. But first, I'm going to be talking about the general quality of the overall announcement itself and the context surrounding it. And let me explain what I mean by that. This announcement was bad. I do not mean that the Alchemy format is going to be bad, because I haven't played it. It's brand new. So I don't know how anyone would expect to say that preemptively. But it was a bad announcement because it had such a visceral reaction, because everyone, including myself, was hoping to get some kind of information about Pioneer, about Historic, about older cards being added to Arena in the form of Historic anthologies or remastered sets, something like that. And we got none of it. We got nothing. In fact, we got the opposite, where they even said Pioneer might not be on for at least 2+ years. So not good news for people who were hoping for that. And so because of that, people just kind of instantly were like, oh, whatever they say, I'm going to trash because it's not what I wanted. And I don't really blame them. But so already, this announcement was already kind of not great, kind of announcing another format. There's a whole bunch between Arena and Paper, and so like not really something that was instantly going to appeal to people. So I'm going to try and kind of separate that from the rest of the video, but just know that regardless of how good this could have been, because regardless of what it was, if it was not the thing that people wanted, a Historic Pioneer stuff, right, people were going to hate it anyways. So just try and put that out of your mind. I'm going to try and do that as well. Let's actually talk about Alchemy. So what's Alchemy? So Alchemy is essentially the new digital only format, or a new digital only format, another one on Arena, to be released in 3 days. 3 days. And what it does is it uses the standard card pool as the base and adds two things. It adds rebalanced cards, okay, and digital only cards. So if your first thought is here, saying, okay, this sounds like Historic, but rotating and standard, you would be correct. That is essentially what we have. It is essentially just a rotating format, right? It is still going to rotate. It's not going to be like Historic and be a non-rotating format and just constantly have cards added to it. It's still going to rotate, new cards in and out. But it is going to use digital cards as well as rebalance cards. So one of the big problems that they talk about here is the difference between tabletop and the digital card game, and trying to dig more into it, yada yada yada, and maintaining that while also digging into the benefits of digital play. So the big thing here is these rebalance cards, because these are the new thing. Like, they do rebalance the digital cards in Historic, although that's kind of related to this as well. But this is the first time that we're going to have actual rebalanced cards from Standard, or from these sets, kind of readjusted on Arena, which we can't do in Paper because there is no way to do that. So here are some examples of the standard cards they are going to be rebalancing. I'm not going to talk about all of these because some of these are kind of, pointless. But the important note here is that they are both buffing, meaning improving, and nerfing, making worse some cards here. So first we have Alden's Epiphany, which is being changed so that its foretold cost is 1 more. So it's now going to be 7. And you only get the extra bird creatures if it was foretold. So it is much, much worse. Is it still even playable? I don't know. Right? This is a weird thing. Asika's Chariot is being changed to only make 1 cat when it enters, but it only costs 2 power, or it only has crew 2. It only takes 1 of the cats to crew it. So this is kind of a buff, but also a nerf. Like, it's a buff and nerf at the same time, or you could call it an adjustment. And this is, still good where it can still, make copies of the cats. And it also can just, it's already comes with something that can crew it. But if your opponent kills it or kills the token, right, then they're left with 1 less thing. The thing that made Asika's Chariot pretty crazy was that you made it, you cast it, you make 2 cats, and even if you crew and your opponent kills the chariot, you're left with 2 free cats. And then I think the most noteworthy of the buffs is Demi-Lich, which is getting an additional point of toughness, which seems like not a lot, but actually might make it playable. So those are the ones that I'm going to talk about. I don't really want to talk about Omnath. Like, people think Omnath might just not be playable. I'm not really sure why they have Cosmos Elixirs and Wizards class. They also have Druids class in there as well as added here. They didn't have it on here, but so anyways, this is something really unique where this is how they are fixing cards, and so presumably they're not going to just ban cards. I would hope that they never just ban a card. That would be really interesting. They haven't discussed that. But I assume if a card is banned in Standard, it is banned in Alchemy. I guess that's pretty self-explanatory. But yeah. So this had a lot of people, give some worries for a second, because as we know about Arena, when you rebalance a card, as they've announced in Historic, you don't get the wild cards for it, which a lot of people complained about. As opposed to when you ban a card, they redeem it for you. Similar to when it was, if it was suspended, you didn't get it, but only if it got banned. So this is all, sort of weird interaction between whether you get the wild cards back or not, which a lot of people care about because, that's the money incentive, right? If a card gets banned in paper, you get, you still have the physical card, but, maybe the card goes down in value, but you still have the card. Whereas if a card gets banned on Arena, and you spent, some wild cards on it, you don't have anything physical to use. You don't have it. You don't have anything that's useful anymore. And that can be pretty taxing for people who don't spend money or who don't have a lot of wild cards or don't want to build lots of decks. So people were really worried because, what happens if your card gets rebalanced, and it's, and you have to get a different card, or do you have to get the other card? Right, so there's going to be 2 versions of Alden's Epiphany on Arena. There is going to be this version, and there's going to be the original version. And that version is obviously going to be played in Standard as opposed to Alchemy, because of note here, Standard is not changed at all. Standard is still a paper format. It is still being played in paper, and you can still play it on Arena. So there will be 2 versions. And so the question is, do you need to get both 4 copies of this and 4 copies of the original? Or like, how does that work? And they kind of explain it down here, but essentially, as long as you open one of them, you get the other. So if you open a copy of Goldspan Dragon, as they say here, you can even see in the image here, you get the original copy and you get the rebalanced. And what I mean by that is there are going to be these alchemy packs I don't think they talk about that. But anyways, in the Alchemy packs, it'll be the option to open up Alchemy cards, which will contain the digital cards as well as the remastered, rebalanced cards. And so, regardless of whether you're opening standard packs or Alchemy packs, you get the card itself. It just depends on which version is actually played. Depends on whether you're playing standard or Alchemy. So this immediately quenched a lot of people's worries of you don't need to craft more cards, you get that and that's it. So if your card gets rebalanced and you don't want to play it in Alchemy anymore, you can just go and play it in standard, I guess, and whatnot. So yeah. Anyways, so moving on, then the other card type that we have here is, and this is a lot less interesting, is the digital cards. So here we have an example of one of them, Absorb Energy, uses the perpetual mechanic. So this we've kind of seen in Historic already with Historic Horizons. They've added some digital only mechanics. They've got this draft mechanic and this that shuffles Lightning Bolt into your deck. This card's really interesting. I'm really interested to do stuff with this card. So essentially Alchemy, they're digging more into the digital aspects of MTG Arena and trying to use that for Alchemy, both in terms of the card designs themselves and rebalancing. Otherwise, pretty much exactly the same as standard. They were gonna add. They're talking about some queue updates. There's going to be a a best of 1 and best of 3, and also adding different queues and stuff like that. So I like seeing all of this. But let's talk about is this actually going to be good? Is this a good idea? Some people have been saying it's a great idea. It's digging into the digital stuff. And anyone who doesn't like digital can just keep on playing standard, whatever. And then there are other people, saying this is a waste of time, and whatnot. I'm gonna say it's neither. I'm gonna say that this is, I don't have any strong feelings yet, but I do think that this was something that was necessary, and I'll explain why. So I think this was necessary because standard sucks. And I don't think it has to suck, but I do think it sucks. I think the way that they do their cards, right, like putting Auron's Epiphany or putting stuff like Omnath into standard, these volatile cards have the opportunity to be not fun. And notice how I use the word there, not fun, instead of balanced, because there's always going to be a best deck or a really, really good card in standard. That's just how it works. But they've taken an approach now of, trying to make things more interesting and, playing against the same deck all the time. Not really what you want. I don't think it would necessarily be a problem if there was a card that was seeing lots of play, but if there is one particular deck that is the only deck that's being played, then it's a problem. But I don't necessarily think that this format is necessarily going to solve that problem. If it were me, I would have much rather seen Wizards of the Coast take a much more hardlined approach towards bannings in standard. I would have rather just them say we are just banning Alrund's Epiphany, banning Isika's Chariot, and taking a much more vigorous approach to banning cards. If it were me, they would be banning cards way more often than they are. I think just getting making some sort of change more often is better than no changes. I think people get bored very easily. I think things get solved very easily. I think there's enough cards in standard with the rate at which they're making them that they can do that. But as we've seen, they aren't doing that. And so, even though, in my opinion, rebalancing a card is essentially the same here. So, for example, Alrund's Epiphany. Alrund's Epiphany is essentially banned in like, if let's say this version is bad. Sorry, let me back up here. Let's say this new version here isn't good. Like the 7 mana, extra turn spell, or the foretell cost is too much, or you can't copy it with Galvanic Iteration to get the tokens and such. So it's just not worth it anymore. If that's the case, what is the difference between banning the card in Standard and rebalancing it in Alchemy? I don't see a difference, because in both scenarios you can't play the card anymore, because it's either not good, right? So it just doesn't see play, or it's banned. So that's my sentiment of it. But again, going back to Alchemy here, I think that it's still a necessary evil, in that I would rather see this and see rebalances, and essentially get rid of the card, than to not see any change at all, and to just be stuck with Alrund's Epiphany and Nasika's Chariot and to suffer through it. So keep that in mind when you're evaluating these rebalances and what they mean for Alchemy, because I think that's a good way of looking at it. I look at these as just bans that they are able to do more often, and if that's actually happens, then that's fine. As for the buff, like this is what I mean by like nerfs when we are nerfing these cards. As for the buffs, these we'll see how it does with Demilich, but I don't see anyone playing Cosmos, Elixir, or Wizards class even after this. Like these cards never saw play. It wasn't like they were particularly weak. They just didn't do anything. They're just not good cards. Yeah. So I don't see these buffs doing anything, and I don't really get why they do this. I'm fine with them buffing cards. I just haven't seen a buff besides, again, this is an exception. Maybe this does something, but besides that, I have not seen anything that makes me go, yeah, this was a good buff. So anyways, I'm gonna move on from rebalancing cards and talk about the digital cards. I know a lot of people don't like the digital mechanic. I know a lot of people don't like the draft mechanic. I'm sort of that opinion as well. I think these conjure cards, as well as the perpetual mechanic, I think all those things are totally fine. This card does something based on who was on the player that draw, so like that's kind of interesting. But with these cards, I don't even know all of the cards able to be gotten with this card. And I think nobody will ever know. And so I feel like that's where a lot of people don't like it. It has nothing to do with it being a digital card. It has to do with, like, I don't know what this card does or what this card can get without looking at it or without having to examine or look up a list. So I would definitely like to limit these, or maybe, figure out a way to have them be more descriptive instead of just saying draft a card from the spellbook. Because that's not descriptive at all. Even they mentioned Davriel's Soulrugger, like his effect was at least relevant, where his was the one where like you could get a good effect and a bad effect, and it did both, and like you knew generally like what it did. Like some of them drew cards, some of them like made your board bigger or made their board bigger. So like that was like a card where you're like, okay, I don't know exactly what it does, but I know like roughly what it should do. Yeah. The main digital card right now that exists me, I'm not going to talk about all of them, but this Torelf's Disciple is both really interesting and also kind of a troll. So for those that don't know, like people have been asking Wizards to put Bolt into Standard, or like saying like, oh, they won't do it, and so this is kind of like a troll of like, yeah, they kind of did it, I guess, but they didn't really. So anyways, this is a 3/3 with haste that when it attacks, you shuffle 4 bolts into your deck. I don't know if this card is good. We've never seen a card like this. This is not really card advantage, but it is, might be interesting to, put into a deck, like a red aggressive deck, where, you could draw, you play this and maybe you draw it later, maybe you use Light Up the Stage. I know that's not in Standard, but this will also be in Historic. So yeah. Um, I think, again, as long as it's since this is just on Arena, like this is all fine, and if it makes people want to play Standard, later, maybe this is fine. I just don't know right now. I don't see a big difference between Alchemy and Standard right now, enough to the point where I would view them as different formats. I just look at Alchemy as Standard on Arena, and maybe that's fine. But also maybe that's not fine, because I do think that people are looking for a different play experience. If when we're looking at trying to, like, if you're trying to have a different format, so like is the meta going to be different on Standard than it is on Alchemy? I don't know if the card pool is going to be different enough to actually allow that. And right, just because there's one really really good card that's nerfed or whatever in Alchemy, it doesn't necessarily mean that the decks are going to look completely different. So that's where I'm at right now. I know like some people were also like upset about nerfing these cards in Historic. I don't really see, like, as of right now, again, like Asika's Chariot was not seeing play in Historic. Neither was, I guess, there was some Alrund's Epiphanies, but like, so what? It wasn't like a big part. I'm not saying that's not a factor, but they've made their choice, I guess. That's just kind of how it is. Um, so anyways, I think that's gonna do it for me. I'm not gonna go into all of the individual cards. They have a bunch of these rebalances that I'm not gonna talk about, as well as they have the card pool up somewhere. Of they have added a bunch of these. There's gonna be about 60 of them. So I'm not gonna talk about those. Feel free to put some in the comments, and we can have a discussion, but I'm not gonna make a whole video about it. But I hope this video has been helpful for people who are maybe trying to figure out how to feel about this. Most people have an opinion one way or another, but um, again, just to recap, I do think that this, while it wasn't a good announcement, I do think that this was a necessary thing to do to keep Arena interesting and to keep people playing Standard. So from a game designer's perspective and from like a business perspective, I completely get why they're doing this. And it is new content is coming soon. So again, as for content on this channel, I probably will be trying out Alchemy. I'm not just gonna refuse to play it just because of I might not love the idea, might not be as excited about it. But we are gonna try that. So on the 9th, right on the 9th, we're gonna be doing some Alchemy and trying out. Yeah, we'll seeing if Alrund's Epiphany is good, seeing if Chariot is still good, and all that stuff. So, yeah. Anyways, I hope this video has been helpful, and if you guys enjoyed, remember to leave a like and subscribe, all of that stuff. And I'll see you guys for the next video.